That's the end of our story for this evening. I hope you've enjoyed hearing those carols. Maybe you've joined in too. Next week, something different. We'll be taking a front seat at one of Cliff Richard's concerts as he presents the Gospel According to Cliff. It's a show for all the family, with Cliff, some seasonal music, and the All Souls Orchestra. Join us then. In the meantime, from all of us here in Peterborough, goodbye, and have a very happy and blessed Christmas.
Celebrate Christmas with the BBC.
I think he's a very underrated composer.
I had that at my wedding 10 years ago.
I believe God is experienced just in the music in its own way.
Stirring stuff, eh? And what a way to start a programme. What links those great works is their composer. And that's why tonight we're here in Bournemouth for a programme that celebrates the music of a man who's inspired so many songs of praise programmes over the years. A man who was born here 150 years ago, Hubert Parry. On a February evening in 1848, Charles Hubert Hastings Parry was born here in Bournemouth. His mother, Isabella, was heavily pregnant with her sixth child when she travelled here on the advice of her doctors. Sadly, she died of consumption 12 days after giving birth. She's buried here at St. Peter's Church, where Parry himself was christened, and which he revisited many times. So let's begin then with one of Parry's best-loved tunes, Laudate Dominum. It was actually originally part of an anthem and was only published as a hymn near the end of Parry's life. It's better known to us as O Praise Ye the Lord.
We're in Hynham Church, which is located in the grounds of the estate of Hynham Court, and this church was built in memory of Parry's mother by Parry's father, and he helped design the building, and all the paintings that you see around you were actually painted by him. And of course he also painted the ceilings of Ely Cathedral, the St Andrew's Chapel in Gloucester Cathedral, and also parts of Tewkesbury Abbey as well.
Now, his father was very devout, as we've just heard. And yet, Parry was a bit of a rebel, wasn't he?
Yes, well, of course, he grew up in the church, and I think he was quite religious when he was a young man. But after he came down from Oxford in 1870, I think that he found the practices of his father, which were quite orthodox. He found them, I think, perhaps a little too much to take, because he was full of the contemporary philosophies of the day, particularly Darwin, and his father was not too pleased about it, actually. Now, of course, in those days it was unusual, but today, of course, I think many people retain some of their own beliefs along with traditional Christian ones.
That's lovely.
It's really great to play the organ on, which Parry himself must have played when he was a boy.
Ah,
coming
great.
to this church.
Yeah. What was that called?
That was actually a chorale fantasia on an old English 18th century tune on When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, which he wrote in 1912 and published in 1915.
What do you think was the piece of music that made him famous?
I think the piece that put Parry's name in lights was Blessed Pair of Sirens, which was a setting of Milton's Ode on a Solemn Music, which Parry wrote for the Jubilee of Queen Victoria in 1887. I expect you might know some of it. It goes a bit like this. That was hugely popular, put Parry's name on the map, and his name went around the country very quickly, and he was given a commission from the Birmingham Festival, which I think was a signal that he really made it. And he wrote his first major oratorio, which was Judith. And I think perhaps people don't know Judith quite so well these days. It's rarely, if at all, performed. But one piece that is very well known was an aria by character called Meshulameth, to the words, long since in Egypt's pleasant land. But it's actually sung to different words now, to a tune called, which is called Repton. And in fact, after Parry's death in 1918, it was reset to the words, Dear Lord and Father of mankind.
Which is now apparently the nation's #1 hymn.
Yes, I'm not surprised. It's absolutely classic Parry.
Much of Parry's life is recorded in these diaries here, kept by the family in Shoolbreed Priory, Sussex. He spent many happy hours here with his daughter and her family. October the 31st, 1903. In the evening, down to Dolly and Arthur
at Shoolbreed. Torrents of rain, difficult to get conveyance at Hazelmere. Arrived just before dinner. They seemed very snug.
My father, of course, knew Parry very well because he was his grandfather. And he always said he was his favourite person. He really loved Parry. And my grandfather said he once remembered looking out of the window and he saw a horse had got into the garden. And suddenly, round the corner, came Hubert Parry with a great mob of children brandishing a large brass warming pan. My grandfather had hoped to rather cautiously stalk the horse, but he said you can imagine the effect on the horse and on the garden.
He was very fond of coming down here to Shoolbreed, wasn't he?
Very fond indeed, and he often used to come by car because he was an early driver, and he liked to come as fast as possible, and sometimes came via Dorking to avoid the speed traps. And in fact, he wrote a series of piano pieces called the Shoolbreed Tunes, and one of them was entitled Matthew. So it was a portrait of my father when he was quite a small boy.
All the personally named tunes are portraits. Elizabeth is a lithe slip of a girl, very springy in her gait. Matthew, a dear little boy of 10. Of course, it's a great place for children's pranks and also for bogies and sprites.
What was his own childhood like?
Well, his own childhood was, in a sense, I think, rather unhappy. His mother died when he was very young, and he then had a stepmother. She was busy with the second family, and his father travelled a lot. And I think he had rather a lonely childhood.
Was he writing music as a child?
Yes, he started writing, well, we know he started writing when he was about 7. He was sent away to prep school, and then at Eton he wrote a lot of music, and he was mad on sport and music. Those were his two top things. And he actually took his Bachelor of Music degree when he was still at Eton, something which I think no one had ever done before.
Even though he was regarded as an unorthodox Christian, he used the words of the Bible a lot, didn't he?
Yes, he used them a great deal. He was very fond of reading the Bible. And on his 16th birthday, in his diary, he writes, "I've finished reading through the entire Bible." But he enjoyed it very much as literature, I think. You said he was an unorthodox Christian. Yes, it's very true. I mean, he went to church, but increasingly he found that what people said in church really didn't match up with the rest of their lives, and he felt there was a great deal of hypocrisy about it. I mean, he very much liked the teachings of Jesus, and you could say that he really was a practicing Christian, but it was just that side of it which he didn't like.
I believe in God, and I believe that He is good, and I think that is the one form of faith that will always stick to me. Beyond that, I believe that we can know nothing of Him.
What other things inspired him to write music?
Well, I think the countryside. I mean, he was very fond and very knowledgeable about nature. And another thing, he loved the sea, and he was a mad yachtsman. Rather like the car, he only liked to go out if it was very dangerous. Once he came back and said we had no fun, it was very, very calm. So he loved all those sorts of things, and I think one can see it in his music.
I praise the earth in beauty seen, with garlands gay of various green. I praise the sea, whose ample field shone glorious as a silver shield, and earth and ocean seem to say, our beauties are but for a day. Son whose chariot rolled on wheels of amber and of gold. I praise the moon whose softer eye gleams sweetly through the summer sky, and moon and sun in answer said, our days of light are numbered. O God, O proud beyond compare, if thus thy meaner works are fair, if thus thy beauties gild the span of ruined earth and sinful man, how glorious must the mansion be where thy redeemed shall dwell with thee. Despite his unorthodox view of Christianity, Parry continued to go to church throughout his life, and his most enduring work is his church music in the form of hymns, anthems, and choral works. One man who influenced Parry greatly was S.S. Wesley, himself a composer and an organist here in Winchester Cathedral, whom Parry frequently visited as a prep school boy.
I used to sit while old Wesley, with his eyebrows raised and his chin sticking out, ruminated on the organ. He was awfully kind to me.
David, what do you think the young Parry would have learned from his visits to the cathedral and from Wesley?
I think an enormous amount, because S.S. Wesley was really the finest organist of his generation. And when Parry came to listen to him, he would sit at the bench and watch him. And so, in a way, this must have been something which was very special to be part of. And also the fact that S.S. Wesley was really spearheading a revival in church music at that time. This must have influenced Parry as he went through his life.
What contribution to the cathedral tradition do you think Parry made? After all, he wasn't as well known as Elgar or Vaughan Williams, was he? Why is that?
Well, his life wasn't really connected with the church. He didn't actually hold a church position, and he was essentially a teacher and academic, as well as being a composer. I mean, he didn't, after breakfast, sit down and write a symphony, because he was director of the Royal College of Music, and that's being a very important position, allowed him to influence such composers as Vaughan Williams and many others, Holst included, who were also students during his time as director.
Were they?
Indeed.
Ah.
So he had a way of being able to pass on his abilities as a musician, but as a composer, to them.
You sing a lot of Parry's works here at the cathedral, don't you?
Yes, we sing the famous I Was Glad and Blessed Pair of Sirens, and also the songs of farewell, which really are very special. They were composed near the end of his life, and clearly, as he was creating them, he must have been thinking about the future and what it was going to hold. And they are very spiritual pieces which have a tremendous directness of emotion.
Now, this is the original manuscript of Parry's most famous work, Jerusalem, written just 2 years before he died. In March 1916, in the middle of the First World War, Parry was asked to set to music Blake's Milton as a patriotic morale booster for the troops. It was an instant success. But Parry was happier when it was taken up by the women's suffragette movement.
I wish indeed it might become the women voters' hymn. People seem to enjoy singing it, and having the vote ought to diffuse a good deal of joy too, so they would combine happily.
I was just reaching the end of writing the script of Chariots of Fire on the last page. It was called Runners, but I wasn't happy with that. It had no dynamic at all, but I said we'll find a title. And I'd been to Abraham's funeral, memorial service, and they'd sung Jerusalem. And so I intended to end this film with them coming out of the memorial service and this hymn rising behind them, because it seemed to be spiritually uplifting, and the film was supposed to be spiritually uplifting.
We sang it for the first time in 1924 at the annual general meeting, and it's been sung every AGM since then. I think it's hopeful and looks to the future, and that's what the WI is all about, caring about the places we live in and trying to improve them. The music, I think, sums all that up, because it's rousing, it's good to sing, it makes them feel hopeful.
Bring me my bow of burning gold, bring me my chariots of fire, see? A chariot of fire. And I thought, there it is, it's athletics, it's games, chariots of fire, inspiration. That's it, chariots of fire. So I shouted down to my wife, I've got it, Pat. She said, what? I said, chariots of fire. She said, oh, no. No, it's too pompous. Anyway, I took no notice of her, and we called it Chariots of Fire, and thank God I did, because it really caught the spirit of the film.
From time immemorial, one's gone down to Cardiff Arms Park with massed male voice choirs and 50,000 crowd, giving voice, I think, to their sort of national identity and sort of providing inspiration to rugby teams with those wonderful Welsh hymns like Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah, and Land of My Fathers. And at Twickenham, it's never been like that. There's never been quite the same atmosphere engendered. That is until last December the 6th, when England played New Zealand, the mighty All Blacks, the greatest rugby team in the world. And I think English reticence, for once, went out of the window as the band of the Royal Artillery struck up with Hubert Parry's Jerusalem.
Jerusalem was what my granddad sought as a very old Victorian socialist, my dad sought, and I seek. And I've always regarded it as a left-wing hymn. But not only that, I've always regarded it as an expression of people's spiritual uplifting, you know. You feel exhilarated by it when you sing it.
Well, it is a splendid tune, and it's a tune which people can learn easily, pick up easily, sing easily, and it has a boldness about it which appeals to people. And the words, of course, are in a way nationalistic. They're of an entirely different kind from Rule Britannia. And so it appeals to people's inner instincts.
It's a perfect marriage of words and music, and I can't wait to sing it. When I go to any church service or a funeral, and it's there, I look forward to singing Jerusalem.
Lord, source of all beauty and harmony, we praise you for your gift of music, for the inspiration given to those who compose it, and especially to your servant, Hubert Parry, for the skill and devotion of those who perform it, and for the faculties which enable us to enjoy it. And so go now, and know that the Lord goes with you. Let him lead you into each day, into the quiet place of your heart, where he will speak with you, Know that he loves you and watches over you, that he listens to you in gentle understanding, and that he is with you always, wherever you are and however you may feel. And the blessing of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, be yours forever. Amen.
Parry didn't live to see the peace he so longed for. He died on the 7th of October 1918, a month before the armistice. His funeral at St. Paul's Cathedral was packed with the great of the good. One mourner